Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right, welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Qasim's not able to join today, and our guest today is Kevin. So, Kevin, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do for a living.
Well, my name is Kevin Vaughan. I'm in the Austin, Texas area. I actually, live just outside of the city, but I'm with TAVCO Services. We trade by the brand TAVCO. And we are a dealer of different technology products that service professionals within the architecture, engineering, and construction space, otherwise known as AEC. So if I drop the AEC acronym, you'll know what I'm talking about there.
Awesome. So can you tell us a little, more about what exactly you do? Like, what makes you better than your competition?
Well, you're gonna, depending on who you ask, you're gonna hear different things. Everybody feels like they have a leg up on stuff. I think number one, I'm a reseller, so I support brands like Canon, HP, Matterport, some software with a company called BricsCAD. Again, these specific products that service these AEC professionals. And in my competitive space, it's really kind of an old school mentality. And it would shock most people that, the way that they continue to do business for the most part is through outside sales. And I've been doing this a long time. I'm in my 23rd year. So I definitely started in that role. But we kind of started morphing more towards a digital front to our business anyway. About 2009, the big awakening for us was during the big recession, especially in the construction arena at that time, business kind of just stopped. And companies like us had to scramble to figure out, where are we gonna, not only keep the company alive, but how can we look to grow? And so that was my first foray into digital marketing to really get ourselves established on that paradigm. And it's morphed into a lot of different things. I mean, we have our own e-commerce store, and we're doing about a third of our business now e-commerce, and we do another 2/3 of that through our traditional means. But when I look at ourselves compared to what the competition is doing, I think that we are a lot more advanced, at least how we are interfacing with people on all levels of a digital front. So that, is, lead generation, the lead nurturing, there's a lot of automation built in, and of course the e-commerce, which is, it's really interesting how that works, because not only can you use that for inbound traffic to come in to generate business, but we can also use that as a tool in our direct business, because of the growth and establishment of the remote workplace. A lot of folks have, dynamic needs, and they're working from home. So if I can just send them a link for something that they need, and they can drop a credit card in there and get what they need fast, it's really, I think that's what sets us apart from the competition.
Yeah, e-commerce is great. So can you talk a little bit more about that? I mean, so in terms of e-commerce, is it all B2B, or what does that look like?
Yeah, we're strictly B2B, and it's interesting because when I look at the demographics of what we serve, and see, I approach this from an interesting perspective, because in another life as a young man, I spent about 8 years in top 40 radio, and had grown through the ranks of, became a music director, became a program director, actually helped launch a radio station, a top 40 radio station in Jackson, Mississippi, Y101 back in the day. But there was a lot of those skills that I learned about breaking down the demographic and looking at, of course, now they call that a persona, right? So you got to really dive into your persona. And for us, it is a B2B client. It is male driven because, that unfortunately we're still at a place where the AEC space is mostly male dominant. But I look at, males 25 to 54 years old. They interface with us Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, and that's it. We don't get a lot of traffic on the weekends, and to be honest, I'm okay with that. But it's all B2B. We kind of know what the standard cycles are. So, we do have our challenging times of the year, which, we just went through one in July. There's just a lot of those business decisions don't get made during the summer months, and they don't get made later on during the holidays at the end of the year. So we just have to capitalize on those trends of, when we know our higher activities of the year are.
Makes sense. So you mentioned that you're near Austin. So Austin is obviously one of the fastest growing cities right now. I'm in Dallas. Same thing here. So how much has that helped your business being in a tech hub in a place like, or near Austin?
Well, I think it helps a lot just by proximity, just by being here. But at the same time, it makes us have to step up our game to compete with not necessarily people in our space, but really, and I don't like this term, but status quo, what the rest of the populace is doing, because I network with other folks. Like I've got a good friend of mine in the Northwest, and it just seems like they haven't caught up technologically the same way so let me give you a case in point. Here in Austin, there's, because one of the things that we sell are the large format printers and the scanners. And, I've certainly made a good living off of that for a long period of time. What we're seeing is there's a decline in that demand for printing because of it's not really an emergence anymore, but more of an adoption of a digital workflow. In fact, there are some projects that happen, they're completely digital. They're just not doing it on paper anymore. And these other companies that I network with, they're just printing a ton. And it's, up in the Rust Belt in the Midwest, it just doesn't seem like it's as, techie, and they're not, diving in as much. I'm not saying they're not doing it, but it just feels like you better be on your game here, to keep up. And so, I feel good about what we've done in our position right now.
Awesome. So in terms of your business, is it like, folks nationwide, or is it mostly in Texas? Like, where are most of your customers located?
So it's morphed into a bit of a dynamic model there, because we still have direct service. We still have technicians employed that will go out and actually service equipment on site. So for that direct business, we have a pretty big geography across Texas. Most of the major metros. So we cover Houston, Austin, San Antonio, Corpus, all areas in between. We do get up into Dallas, Fort Worth area a little bit, but that's a pretty saturated market. And so it doesn't really behoove us to spend a lot of time and effort there. But through our e-commerce and our other digital efforts, we can help people out coast to coast. So really within the contiguous United States, that's kind of what I look at as our customer base.
Makes sense. So in terms of reaching people across the nation, what has been the most effective strategy in terms of marketing and getting the word out about your services and what you're selling?
For me, we've done really well because we worked at it for a long time to optimize the SEO. So we get a lot of organic traffic that comes in. I personally have, since I started this journey in like 2009, I've lost count, but I've probably written over 700 some odd blog articles. Now, a lot of the old ones that aren't relevant anymore have been taken down, but the long form content that's very targeted to a specific topic that, would have an interest to one of our prospects or one of our customers, that's done really well. And what's nice about that is, once you put that out there, then it's kind of free traffic. But of course, that's an ever-changing world, and the search engines are constantly changing. So it's something to stay on top of. But we don't do a lot of paid ads. I've done my due diligence with trying to get the word out through social. Social's just never been like that effective of a channel for me. I tell you what works out really well still today. It's again challenging like everything else, but email. If you can get the email to the now I'm not talking about like marketing emails and spray and pray type scenarios, but if they're targeted and if you're sending them to an individual and you've had that communication with them in the past, if you do it correctly and not spam the snot out of them, then I'm getting open rates 35-40%. And a lot of engagement from there. So if I had to rank them in order, I would say probably organic traffic number one, and then email marketing number two.
In terms of organic traffic, have you done video content, kind of like these interviews? Because I feel like YouTube and video content is kind of the more of the SEO in 2023 per se.
It is, and that's the Mount Everest I'm trying to climb now. We do have a YouTube channel, put a few things out there, and it's if you follow any of the influencers like Mr. Beast, he says, look, your stuff is just going to suck when you put it out there, and you just got to keep doing it. So that's kind of where we're at. We're just at that point. The challenge with all this stuff is to provide something useful, to provide something, beneficial to people without being pitchy. It's so easy to try to go, oh, let me tell somebody about this and want to talk about, the next greatest thing. And the next thing it turns into a commercial where it's just a 5-minute sales pitch about how great something is. And you really have to kind of peel that back and look at what their needs are and go after that and talk about how you can alleviate the pain of what they're dealing with their day-to-day activities.
Makes sense. So what is the role of artificial intelligence and machine learning in your business?
I've dabbled in it a little bit. I mean, most of everything we've done is, and I say just about all that we've done is, human generated content. Where I find if I'm trying to parse something down, that's where I've tapped into something like a Chat GPT, because I can take a lot of content and throw it in there from, say, a post I did or an article I wrote, I don't know, three years ago that's evergreen. So it's still like churning. And if I want to summarize that and maybe turn that into a social media post or actually send that out through email, Chat's been very influential to dump that information in there and go, hey, break this up into 3 parts. And how does this make sense for, I've kind of started using it as a digital assistant from that realm, but nothing to create anything.
So have you seen AI use cases for your business in terms of like even customer service, like high level chatbots or machine learning and AI? Have you seen those types of use cases?
I don't currently have the tools to turn that on. We are hosted on HubSpot, and I know that HubSpot has rolled out some AI integrations. I really haven't dabbled into it. I've experimented using a chatbot before, but it's not, I wouldn't consider it like an AI thing because it's not generating the responses and looking at what the queries are. It's more like pre-programmed. I've since turned that off, at least for the short period, because I didn't see a lot of performance coming out of that chat bot. But and when I ask people anecdotally, there's some people that just absolutely hate those things. So there's a certain demographic, I think, that really is attracted to that type of technology. But again, so that's where I have to dive into my target persona. And again, I'm looking at a male, oriented base, 25 to 54 years old. Right. I think if it was a younger crowd, maybe they would engage more with stuff like that, but it just didn't seem to resonate as well as I wanted to. So look, I test everything. I put it out there and I try it and go, hey, this isn't working. I kill it, because there's no sense in trying to force feed that on people.
Makes sense. So how else do you think the AI could help your business?
Uh I don't know. I mean, the future will determine that as more and more AI capabilities come out.
Even like day-to-day tasks, that you think could be automated, that you think are just too manual per se.
You know, you could probably make a case for like processing orders when they come in, but because we support 5 different manufacturers, they all have different order processes. So it's not as streamlined as you would think that it is. And unfortunately, at this point, at least behind the scenes, there's some manual work that needs to be done to take care of those tasks. It would be nice if an AI was, or something more like I'm thinking in terms of like a service like a Zapier or something like that, where you take all of these elements and you kind of put them together and you got one resource that ties everything together. Unfortunately, a lot of the constraint is not on us. It's through the vendors that we work with and the different distributors that we, interface with. They don't have the API for us to integrate. So it really doesn't make sense to try to get a tool or develop anything, because, that's the stopgap on their side, not our side.
Makes sense. So you mentioned obviously like, marketing and just keeping up to speed. What would you say is the biggest challenge in your business right now?
Companies having budget to do anything. We're still kind of feel like, because we're, we sell and service technology. In my experience, through COVID and everything else that we went through, when times get tough or people get afraid, the 2 budgets that get cut right away is, number one is marketing, right? So advertising, everything just gets cut. And the other thing is technology, because everybody has something. They go, what we have is working now. We'll just make it work. And then the other interesting aspect, I was actually talking with our service manager yesterday, and she brought to my attention, when I was asking what the mindset was of a lot of our clients, and she said it's interesting because there's companies that had been mostly remote with their employees, and now they're changing the policy where they got to come back at least part-time, if not full-time. And there's in certain areas, there's resistance to that. And employees are actually leaving companies because they just don't want to return to the office, and there's enough shortage in the construction industry right now that people are jumping ship anyway. And I think that when you have those type of personnel problems within a business, that is the squeaky wheel that's going to get attention. And then technology is going to take a back seat as far as like any upgrades or anything like that. So that's been the challenge for us, is just to get to the top of their demand tree of what they need to address. And things are definitely starting to look better, but it has been challenging, especially through COVID and afterwards, especially with the economy the way that it is, and interest rates as high as they are. That affects everything. So when interest rates are high, then developers are not spending money on properties because they don't want to pay that extra money for it. So it has suppressed the market a little bit, and everything kind of rolls downhill. But as far as us getting the word out, we're still getting the traffic. So I know people are still looking at it. We just need them to convert. It's more conversions.
So for you, in terms of the economy right now, I mean, would you say that so far this year has been slower than last year, or is it the same, or what does that look like for you?
I really think that it's slowed down. Like we kind of started off the year pretty strong, and then right when we got around summertime, it just kind of tanked. And I've heard that from various sources that are experiencing the same thing, at least in my industry. Again, I think some of it's just standard summertime stuff. Some of it's tied to, inflation and economy fears. I do see things trending back the other way. We're still waiting for things to to develop. I have a feeling that we'll have a decent fourth quarter, and I feel pretty good about going into the next year. But comparatively speaking, last year was a little better than this year.
Makes sense. So, what would you say is your top business priority in the next 3 to 6 months?
Ah, God, where do I start? The problem is I got so many things to do, and it's hard to, figure out which one to focus on first. We are really making a big effort with our BricsCAD software. That is a great alternative for, AutoCAD, which is kind of the general software used by a lot of folks in the industry. We need to do a better job of getting that promoted. But other than that, it's just kind of, business as usual, just, keep marching out there and letting people know there's some other new, with some of my manufacturers going to be some new products released. And so that's always a new campaign to put some things together and get that word out there and build some new funnels, but always plenty to do.
So, what would you say is the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew before you started your journey in this career?
I don't even know how to answer that because I've been doing it for so long. I tell you the one thing that, kind of going back to something you asked earlier, and that was the video marketing. I wish I would have spent more time on that earlier. Like if I could have really dove into that when we had more quote unquote free time, like during the COVID era where, everything was repressed, then that content would be out there doing what it's doing. And so now I feel like I'm late to the game. I heard somebody, mention, I listened to a lot of podcasts and whatnot. And somebody said the best time to, I think it was Gary V, said the best time to, start, video marketing was 10 years ago. That was, the best time to do it. The second best time is today. So that's, kind of hits home. So I think that as far as a forward motion of, what we plan to spend a lot of time on and development, it's going to be video marketing.
Makes sense. Yeah, 100%. He's right. I would say it's like it's never too late to start, and it's like you're never gonna get yourself out there if you don't start. I mean, I'm sure you probably seen that. Some podcasts just start overnight and they just go viral, and it's just gonna happen. So I don't think there's ever like a bad time to start.
Yeah. And it's about getting the information that's going to be important to the customer. And they're always going to have questions. They're always going to want to, see how something works. And so if you can showcase that, which there's always been this thing, especially selling software, there's always been this thing about doing webinars, and webinars are great. And, this sort of thing is great, but it's time consuming. And when you're limited on personnel, in my mind, I think if you can take that same structure and really polish it and make it nice and put it in a video format where somebody can watch that on demand, then that's out there. So you do the hard work one time, publish the content, and have that as a renewable or ongoing resource that your customer base can use.
So if we're going to have this conversation in 1 year from now, where do you expect things to go for your business?
I expect that things are going to stay on the trajectory that we're doing. We're still growing our e-commerce business. We're hosted on Shopify, and that's been a wonderful platform for us. And they keep adding new functionality into that. We keep adding new products and adding that to the store. And by the way, that's a different URL. It's TAVCOtech.com. But we kind of showcase all of the different items there.
Awesome. So if somebody watching this wanted to reach out to you, do you mind sharing your company website or social media handles? Like best way for somebody watching this to get in contact with your business?
Yeah, so our website's always a great resource, and our primary site is TAVCO.net, and that's TAVCO.net, and then TAVCOtech.com, and they're actually linked together and work together. But TAVCOtech.com is our e-commerce site. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I've got an old LinkedIn handle, so you just find me at Texas Kevin. Just look for Texas Kevin, and you'll find me there. But I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and connected with a lot of folks, and I welcome anybody to reach out, ask me any questions, or feel free to share any comments or suggestions. I'm always open to that.
Sounds great. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for your time. We're rooting for you. Hopefully, you guys keep growing and you guys start making more video content. And I'm looking forward to watching it. So,
all right. Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure. And I look forward to chatting with you down the road.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Take care.
All right. Thanks. All right. Bye.